the billionaire thought he was buying entertainment. He had no idea he was about to get schooled. "Play something," I said. Marcus Webb's fist slammed against the marble table, sending the crystal glasses jumping like startled birds. The entire five-star restaurant froze mid-bite. Forks hovered above plates. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the chandeliers seemed to hold their breath. The waitress he'd cornered, Maya, stood frozen, her name tag gleaming under the golden light like an accusation. Webb's friends laughed, cruel, sharp sounds that sliced through the designer's silence. "Come on, Marcus," one of them jeered. "Make her dance too." Maya's hands trembled as she approached the bench of the concert grand piano. But wait, why were her fingers twitching like that? Why did it look like they already knew these keys? The Steinway weighted a $97,000 beast of German precision. Tonight, it was about to transform into a weapon. The secret she had buried was about to roar to life. Maya sat, adjusted the bench. A tiny detail, but with the kind of precision that should have been their first warning. The silence before the storm pressed down like a weight. None of them knew the earthquake they were about to unleash. 3 hours earlier, Maya had been invisible. That's how she preferred it. At Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, where a single bottle of wine cost more than her rent, she drifted through the dining room like a ghost in black slacks and a white shirt, topping up water glasses for people who thought hard work was picking which yacht to summer on. Maya had perfected the art of being seen but not noticed. Smile politely, no sudden movements. Definitely Dante get caught eavesdropping when they bragged about their third homes or their children's trust funds. But Maya always listened. Not to the money talk, to the background music. Tonight it was Chopin Nocturne in E-flat major. The pianist was technically fine but soulless, clunking through the notes like a robot. Maya's fingers twitched against her serving tray. She knew that piece had played it at Carnegie Hall during her Juilliard senior recital. Back when her biggest worry was whether her parents could afford the flight from California to hear her. That was only 18 months ago, before the student loans. Before her performance degree turned out to be less valuable than a Starbucks gift card. Before rent money replaced Rachmaninoff. Miss. A sharp voice snapped her back. A woman draped in diamonds waved her empty champagne flute like a weapon. "We've been waiting forever for refills." "Course. My apologies." Training kicked in. Juilliard had taught her more than Music Hit had taught her to perform under pressure. To hold composure, even when the world was collapsing. Useful skills in the service industry, as it turned out. She glided toward the wine station, passing tables of tech moguls and real estate titans, their conversations dripping with market volatility and yacht maintenance. The pianist shifted to Debussy, but rushed it, smothering the poetry that made Claire de Lune breathe. Maya nearly winced. In her old life, she'd have corrected him gently. In this one, she bit her tongue and poured champagne. Maya. Sergio, the floor manager, appeared at her elbow, his voice pitched low. "Table 12 needs attention." The Webb party. His tone carried the weight of a warning. Translation: difficult customer. Handle with care. Don't make waves. Maya's eyes flicked across the dining room. Table 12. Marcus Webb. He sat at the center like a king holding court, his 5 companions draped in bespoke suits and fake laughter. His gestures were too broad, his laugh too loud. His voice cutting through the restaurant as if he owned not just his table, but the air everyone breathed. New money? Maya diagnosed instantly. The loud kind, the insecure kind, the dangerous kind. She'd seen his type before. Tech billionaires who struck it rich before they learned manners. They treated restaurants like playgrounds and staff like toys. But Webb was worse. He'd sent back 3 courses just to watch the chef scramble. He'd forced the sommelier to recite the wine list twice, then ordered the most expensive bottle to flex. Maya smoothed her apron, pasted on her service smile, and approached. Webb was mid-story, waving his fork like a scepter, a cube of Wagyu beef skewered on the end. So I told the board, either you take my offer, or I build my own company and destroy you. 3 weeks later, they came crawling back, begging. His friends laughed on cute, the kind of laughter money can buy but never earns. "Gentlemen," Maya said softly, her voice trained in restraint. "How are we enjoying everything this evening?" Webb barely flicked his eyes at her. "Wine's getting warm? Fix it. No, please. No, thank you." No recognition she was a human being. Maya checked the bottle in the ice bucket, perfectly chilled. But she knew better than to argue with men like him. She adjusted the ice anyway, buying herself seconds to retreat, and then it happened. The pianist began Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata and botched the opening. Maya's stomach twisted, not from the mistake, from what it meant. Because she knew deep in her bones that sooner or later, she wouldn't be able to keep her secret anymore. Maya's hand froze on the wine bottle. The pianist was butchering Beethoven, playing Moonlight Sonata like a marching band warm-up instead of a midnight confession. Every delicate curve of the piece was stomped flat under his heavy hands. Her reaction was almost invisible, a tiny tightening around her eyes, a breath caught in her throat, but Webb caught it. "Something wrong, sweetheart?" His voice slithered with amusement, dangerous in its playfulness. "You look like someone just stepped on your cat." Laughter cracked around the table, predators scenting blood. "No, sir. Everything's fine." Maya kept her voice smooth, professional.
Ow.
But her mistake came in a flicker of her eyes, toward the piano, toward the massacre happening in 3/4 time. Webb followed her gaze. His smile sharpened. A music lover. How cultured. The word dripped with sarcasm. "Tell me, what do you think of our entertainment tonight?" Maya's stomach nodded. A trap. Every instinct screamed. Deflect, escape, stay invisible. But God, the way he was murdering Beethoven. He's very enthusiastic, she managed. Webb's laugh cut like broken glass. Enthusiastic. "Did you hear that, boys? Our waitress is a music critic." The men erupted in cruel laughter, their designer watches flashing as they leaned in. Other diners turned to watch, sensing the drama like sharks circling blood. "I bet you know all about music," Webb said, voice rising. "What is it they say about people in your position? Failed dreams and all that?" Maya's composure cracked, just slightly. A flicker of pain. He'd found her pressure point. "I should check on my other tables." No. Webb's hand shot out, not touching her but blocking her escape. A wall of money and malice. "You started this conversation? Finish it. What's wrong with the piano player?" The question dangled like a knife over her head. The room hushed. Every eye turned toward her. Two choices. Walk away and let him win, or fight. But with what? She was a waitress drowning in student debt. He was a billionaire with an audience. Maya inhaled slowly. Juilliard had taught her more than notes. It had taught her composure under impossible pressure. She made her choice. "If you really want to know," she said quietly, "he's destroying everything beautiful about that piece." Gasps. Webb's smile spread like a predator's grin. "Destroying it, you say?" His voice carried across the restaurant now, pulling in fresh spectators. That's a strong word. From someone who serves soup for a living, the insult landed perfectly. Heat flushed Maya's cheeks, but she steadied herself. Under fire, that was her armor. "I apologize if I overstepped." "Oh, you did?" Webb cut her off, savoring every syllable. "But now I'm curious, since you're such an expert. Why don't you tell us what he should be playing?" His friends chuckled, cruel amusement bouncing off the chandeliers. Maya scanned the room 30 tables of New York's elite, watching her humiliation unfold like dinner theater. The pianist had shifted to some bland background melody, but the damage was done. Webb had her cornered, and both of them knew it. "I'm sure you're very busy people. Not too busy for an education," Webb interrupted, theatrically broad. He was feeding the audience now. See, this is what's wrong with America. Everyone thinks their opinions matter. Probably took one community college music class, and now she knows better than a professional. Maya's jaw tightened. He didn't know how wrong he was. The acceptance letter from Juilliard. The scholarship that had made her parents cry with pride. The standing ovation at Carnegie Hall. The Rachmaninoff that had shaken her bones with glory. All of it flashed like lightning behind her eyes. "Actually," she began quietly, "I attended. Let me guess." Webb steamrolled her words. "You wanted to be a musician but couldn't cut it. So now you're bitter about everyone who actually made it." He smiled, twisting the knife. "That's why you're here, right? Serving drinks instead of playing Carnegie Hall?" The mention of Carnegie Hall struck her like a blow. She had been there. She had conquered that stage. But to him, she was just another failed dreamer in an apron. Webb leaned in, his voice a purr of cruelty. I think our little critic here needs some humility. What do you think, boys? Marcus, you're terrible, but I love it. Make her sing. Karaoke night at No. Webb held up a hand. His eyes glittered with inspiration. Something crueler. Something public. He rose slowly, commanding the restaurant with the ease of a man who believed money was gravity. Conversations hushed, table by table. Ladies and gentlemen, Webb announced, his voice ringing like theater. Tonight, we have a treat. Our server here thinks our pianist isn't up to her standards. Nervous laughter rippled across the dining room. Some diners shifted uncomfortably, but none intervened. Maya felt the walls closing in. Dozens of eyes pinned her in place, stage she'd never asked for. Failed dreamer. Community college? Couldn't cut it. Every word Webb threw had painted her as a nobody. So here's what we're going to do, Webb declared, gesturing grandly toward the Steinway. Since she's the expert, she's going to show us all how it's really done. Gasps. The pianist stopped mid-phrase, his hands hovering above the keys, insulted and uncertain. The restaurant fell silent. Only the faint clink of silverware, the rustle of silk dresses. All eyes turned to Maya, frozen, cornered, teetering between dignity and despair. And somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "Show them." Webb's trap was flawless, refuse, and she'd be branded all talk. Except, and she risked exposure, her secret, her pride, her everything. But when Maya's eyes locked on the Steinway, something stirred inside her chest. Something she thought was long dead. A ghost of muscle memory, of magic, of music that could breathe life into silence. For 18 months, it had been buried under rejection letters, overdue bills, and the grind of survival. But the piano called to her now, not as an instrument, as an old friend. Webb was still talking, milking the room, but Maya wasn't listening. Her gaze stayed on the Steinway. $97,000 of polished black precision and possibility. For the first time since arriving in New York, she remembered who she used to be. She still was. Hidden under the apron and the invisibility cloak of service work. The question was she brave enough to let them see? Maya's silence stretched. Exactly 7 seconds. Long enough for the restaurant to lean forward, waiting. Long enough for Webb's smirk to curdle. What's the matter, sweetheart? His voice dripped with mock concern. Stage fright? Or are you realizing you're in way over your head? 30 tables of Manhattan's elite watched, hungry for the spectacle. A billionaire schooling a waitress. But Maya's eyes were on the piano. She recognized it now. The Steinway Model D. The very same she'd trained on at Juilliard. The very same instrument that had carried her through Chopin, Rachmaninoff, Bach. Her fingers tingled. 18 months of suppressed instinct clawed their way out. I don't usually, she began. Of course you don't. Webb cut in, his hyenas cackling on cue. Usually you serve drinks and keep quiet, but tonight's different, isn't it? He stepped closer, invading her space, radiating the smug confidence of a man who'd never been told no. Something shifted inside Maya. A locked door creaked open. Behind it, her parents' faces, immigrants working double shifts to pay for her lessons. Her teacher, Professor Martinez, who had told her, "You don't play music, let music play through you." Her shoulders straightened. Fine, she said. Webb blinked. Not the answer he expected. I said fine. Maya's voice was steady now. You want a demonstration? You'll get one. The restaurant went pin-drop silent as she stepped away from Webb and toward the piano. Well, Webb recovered, his showman mask snapping back on. Our little critic has a spine. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves for a once-in-a-lifetime performance. Cruel laughter rippled through the room, but the edge had dulled. Something in Maya's stride unsettled them. She reached the Steinway, approached it the way a soldier approaches, a weapon or a lover approaches a reunion. The bench height, wrong. The lid, half open, muting the acoustics. The stand, cluttered with cheap, uninspired sheet music. Maya swept it aside with one efficient motion. She didn't need training wheels, not tonight. She adjusted the bench to notches counterclockwise, exactly right. Very professional, Webb called out, straining for sarcasm. Look, boys, YouTube University at work. His friends laughed, but not as freely as before. because something about Maya's calm precision was unsettling. This wasn't karaoke night fumbling. This was ritual, muscle memory, authority. She pressed the pedals lightly. Sustain, soft, perfect. The Steinway was in concert condition, waiting for hands worthy of it. Her hands hovered above the keys. For one breathless moment, she wasn't deciding what to play. She was deciding who to be. Not the invisible waitress. Not the failed dreamer with useless degrees. But Maya, the Juilliard graduate, the Carnegie Hall soloist, who once made professors weep with a single phrase of Rachmaninoff. What's she waiting for? Someone whispered. Probably trying to remember chopsticks, Webb sneered. But even he couldn't hide the crack in his voice. Because her posture was too perfect. Her fingers, too poised. Alarm bells were going off in his chest. Maya closed her eyes. Professor Martinez's voice echoed. Find the music inside you first. Let it rise until it has no choice but to pour through your hands. When she opened her eyes again, the waitress was gone. The pianist had returned. Her hands descended. The first notes exploded from the Steinway, dark, unmistakable. Not chopsticks. Mary Had a Little Lamb, Rachmaninoff. Piano Concerto No. 2 in C minor. Gasps rippled through the dining room. It wasn't just music, it was recognition. Even the untrained ears knew these chords. They'd heard them in films, in commercials, in every cultural echo that separates background noise from art. Webb's smile faltered. Just for a heartbeat, but Maya saw it. 3 measures in, and his smug certainty was already cracking. This wasn't supposed to be happening. Waitresses didn't play Rachmaninoff. Failed dreamers didn't command Steinways like generals commanding armies. What is she? One of Webb's friends whispered. Shut up, Webb hissed. His theatrical bravado was gone, replaced by something he didn't understand fear. Maya's fingers moved with effortless precision, her body remembering every nuance. This was no accident. This was muscle memory carved from thousands of hours, from practice rooms that smelled of resin and dust, from nights when she'd played until her fingers blistered. She wasn't performing for them. She wasn't even performing for Webb. She was performing for herself. For the girl who once believed she belonged on the world's greatest stages, and in that Marbleland Crystal restaurant, she did. 18 months of silence, sacrifice, and swallowed pride melted away like snow under sunlight. Conversations around the restaurant collapsed one by one, until even the clinking of silverware seemed embarrassed to continue. The air itself grew taut, as if holding its breath. A sous chef peeked through the swinging kitchen door, ladle in hand, frozen mid-stir. The sommelier abandoned his wine cart and leaned against a marble pillar, slack-jawed. Udge. Maya's music wasn't background anymore. It was the foreground, the centerpiece, the cathedral. This is impossible, Marcus Webb muttered, his words wobbling between disbelief and dread. His table leaned in, hanging on him for reassurance that wasn't coming. She's a waitress. She serves drinks. His protest broke off as Maya's left hand launched into thunder. While her right spun melodic silk 32 notes above, the hired pianist in the corner, forgotten and sweating, stopped pretending to shuffle sheet music. His mouth formed a single word he dared not say aloud. Genius. Webb's friend James, the only one with even a shred of musical training, leaned forward, panic crawling across his prep school polished face. Marcus, he whispered. That's not easy music. That's I know what it is. Webb snapped, but there was a quake in his voice. For the first time tonight, he wasn't the predator. It was the cornered animal. Maya reached the end of the exposition. She lifted her hands. The silence that followed wasn't emptiness. It was expectation, the pause before a thunderclap. Webb saw his chance to wrestle the room back under his control, plastered on a smirk that looked more like a grimace. Very nice, he said too brightly. Ambitious for a server. Cute little party trick. He looked around for support. But instead of cruel laughter, he met a wall of focused eyes. Cultured, moneyed, educated faces that knew the difference between a trick and transcendence. What they were hearing tonight was transcendence. She's actually... James began, but Webb cut him off. She's actually nothing, Webb barked. Anyone can memorize a few bars. And then Maya's hands fell back on the keys. What poured out was not memorization. It was revelation. The development section of Rachmaninoff's second concerto roared to life. the passage where even professionals sweat blood. Her left hand thundered with octaves like earthquakes, while her right sang a melody so fragile it felt stolen from heaven. The restaurant's acoustics, designed for whispered conversations and champagne laughter, revealed their secret potential. Each note rang clear as crystal, ricocheting off marble and velvet, filling every hidden corner with something bigger than music. "Oh my God," someone whispered. "She's incredible." "Wait, is that really Rachmaninoff?" another voice murmured. The whole concerto, James breathed, his prep school baritone trembling. "She's playing the whole bloody thing." With every phrase, Webb's empire of arrogance crumbled. The man who treated humiliation like a hobby now found the joke turning inside out, and he was the punchline. Maya's performance hit the recapitulation, themes reborn stronger, fuller, wiser. It was artistry sharpened by pain, talent burnished by survival. This wasn't just a concerto. It was a confession, a reclamation, a war cry disguised as beauty. The chandelier above seemed to pause, its glittering, as if even crystal couldn't compete. Webb's smirk had vanished. His face was pale, slack, stripped of all the swagger that money had bought. His friends sat frozen, their laughter long dead, replaced with the uneasy awe of men who realized they'd been in the presence of something money could never purchase. Then came the cadenza, the moment where every pianist stands alone, naked against the silence. Pretenders crumble here, masters rise. Maya soared. Her left hand rolled with tidal arpeggios, her right carved melodies that refused to obey gravity. Notes weren't just played, they ascended, riding thermals like birds too wild to be caged. And as she played, one truth became inescapable. Tonight, Marcus Webb hadn't bought entertainment. He had paid unwillingly for a coronation. The technique was flawless, but more than flawless, it was alive. Every note carried a pulse. Every phrase stitched itself into something larger, something that didn't just sound like music, but felt like truth. "Jesus Christ," James whispered, his prep school composure cracking at last. His jaw dropped, his eyes wide. "She's not just good, she's bleeping brilliant." The profanity detonated in the middle of the restaurant like a champagne cork popping at a funeral, but nobody flinched. Not a single fork, knife, or glass moved. The entire room was caught in Maya's spell. Even the hired pianist, who had been half-heartedly stuffing sheet music into his bag, froze. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her with the particular cocktail of awe and jealousy only musicians can taste. He'd trained his whole life, degrees, competitions, 20 years of gigs, and yet he'd never produced this, not this fire, not this kind of beauty that made even strangers feel as if they were hearing their own souls played back to them. Maya slipped seamlessly into the concerto's most vicious passage. Her fingers blurred across the key's octaves that leapt like lightning strikes, chromatic scales that seemed impossible, thunderous chords that shook the Steinway to its bones. But here's the secret. It wasn't the mechanics that hushed the room. It was the magic. The way she breathed life into Rachmaninoff's genius, shaping it into something more, something holy. Okay, Webb blurted, his voice pitching higher than he intended. He sounded like a balloon animal begging not to be twisted. "We get it, you're talented, you can stop now." But his plea was a paper airplane thrown at a hurricane. The music swallowed his words whole. Maya was entering the concerto's heart, the moment where every theme collided in a tidal wave of emotion. Her body swayed with it, shoulders rising and falling, head tilting. Her whole being transformed into an extension of the instrument. Around the room, Manhattan's elite began to rise, not out of confusion, not out of politeness, but out of instinct. The standing ovation had already begun before the final notes had landed. "Who is she?" someone whispered. "Where did she train?" murmured another. "That's conservatory level," breathed a woman in pearls. "Conservatory," her companion scoffed. "That's beyond conservatory." The whispers crackled through the room like sparks through dry grass. Webb's miscalculation was spreading in real time, burning his reputation to ash. Maya's hands moved faster, her body completely absorbed. Each run, each chord, was a piece of her story. 10 years of practice, 8 hours a day, sacrifices of sleep, friendships, and comfort all poured into this single moment. Not for money, not for fame. For this. For the chance to dissolve into the music and take everyone with her. The climax surged like a storm breaking overhead. Left hand thundered low, right hand sang pure as crystal. Every detail, dynamics, phrasing, rhythm melded into perfection. And then, silence. Not the awkward, cough-filled hush of a polite audience. No, this was reverence. A silence that weighed more than applause ever could. Maya struck the final chord of resonance that seemed to hover in the air long after her hands left the keys. The Steinway whispered its dying echoes through the room like a benediction. 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds. Not a breath, not a clink of glass. Just awe. Webb sat hollow-eyed, his smirk long gone. Confusion, embarrassment, and maybe, just maybe, the first flicker of shame. His entertainment had become his execution. Maya sat still, her hands folded, her breath steady, looking exactly like what she was, a world-class pianist who had just reclaimed her throne. 7 full seconds passed. 7 seconds that rewrote everything. Then James began clapping, slow, measured, certain. The sound spread like an avalanche. A second clap, a third. And then the dam broke. Thunderous applause shook the chandeliers overhead. Manhattan's elite were not merely clapping. They were cheering, roaring, rising to their feet, as if their very status depended on it. The woman who had earlier demanded champagne refills now had mascara streaking down her cheeks. The tech moguls who had been droning about market volatility were on their feet, their phones forgotten. Even the kitchen staff, the line cooks, dishwashers, Pret, chefs stood wide-eyed at the doors, pride blooming in their chests. Maya had silenced the city that never sleeps. Sand in that silence. She had made them listen. Maya rose slowly from the bench, her movements unhurried, graceful like a queen, ascending rather than a waitress standing. The applause swelled again at the simple act of her standing. And she accepted it with the serene poise of someone who had already performed on the world's greatest stages. A small smile touched the corners of her lips, measured, dignified, not triumphant, not vengeful. Just quietly satisfied. Webb remained seated, isolated in the middle of a storm of standing ovation. He looked like a man drowning, his face cycling through expressions like a broken slot machine. Confusion, embarrassment, the sickening realization that the trap he had set for someone else had sprung on him instead. James was still clapping, his eyes never leaving Maya. His voice rang out, full of reverence and fury at once. That was Carnegie Hall level. It's better than most professionals I've heard. Then he turned, his applause slowing as his glare landed on Webb. Marcus, what the hell have you done? But Webb had no answer. His carefully engineered humiliation had collapsed into rubble, leaving him exposed. Every cruel word he'd spoken, every smug assumption, every calculated barb, now hung in the air like damning evidence. The applause went on for a full minute, an eternity in restaurant time. Maya bowed slightly, accepting the recognition with elegance. And when at last the clapping softened, she remained standing beside the piano, not the invisible waitress anymore, but unmistakably the artist she had always been. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying across the hushed room, "thank you for listening. No mockery, no spite, just simple grace." Voice cut across the quiet. From table 15, an older woman Maya recognized as a regular patron rose from her chair. "Miss Maya, where did you train?" The question seemed to suspend time. Maya hesitated only a breath, then spoke. "Juilliard," she said simply. "Class of 2023. The name dropped into the silence like a stone into still water, and the ripples spread instantly. Heads turned. Gasps escaped. "Juilliard," James repeated, as if Webb needed it spelled out for him. His voice was venomous now. "She's a F***ing Juilliard graduate, Marcus, and you had her pouring your wine." Webb's mouth opened, but his voice came out in a whisper, thin and pathetic. I had no idea." Even to himself, it sounded hollow. Ignorance was no defense. Everyone knew it. Maya's reply was soft, but it cut like glass. "That's the problem. Talent doesn't care about your bank account." The words landed like a physical blow, elegant in their simplicity, devastating in their truth. Murmurs ignited around the room, whispers swelling into commentary. "Did you hear how he spoke to her? Unbelievable." and she handled it with such class. The verdict of the court of public opinion was swift, and Marcus Webb was guilty. Then the older woman from table 15 stood taller, her voice commanding the room. "Miss Maya, I'm Margaret Sinclair from the Sinclair Foundation. We support emerging artists. I'd very much like to speak with you about performance opportunities, real ones, the kind that belong on proper stages." A ripple of awe passed through the room at the name. Margaret Sinclair's foundation was one of the most prestigious in New York's arts world. Maya inclined her head. "I'd be honored, Mrs. Sinclair." Her tone was professional, not desperate. She wasn't clawing for rescue. She had already reclaimed her dignity. Webb made one last pathetic attempt at control. "Look, I think we're all getting a bit carried away here." But his own table turned on him. "Shut up, Marcus," James snapped, flat and final. "You've humiliated yourself enough for one evening." The rebuke from his closest friend sealed his downfall. Maya looked at Webb for a long moment, not with triumph, not with anger, but with something resembling pity. "Everyone has value beyond what you see," she said softly. It was her second quotable truth of the night, delivered with the kind of grace that money couldn't buy and power couldn't fake. Webb's voice cracked as he finally surrendered. I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything." It wasn't much of an apology, but it was the first genuine thing he'd said all evening. Maya nodded once, accepting the words, but not excusing the cruelty. "Thank you for the opportunity to play," she replied with a quiet irony that made several diners smile. "Welcome to my channel. I'm here to talk about a character I like to call Maya. Now, before I begin, I want to say that this is not intended to be a representation of any particular individual or group. This is simply a creative exercise for my channel, which is dedicated to the art of character creation. So let's get started with ethnicity. I'd say Maya is black. I envision her as someone with a warm but reserved expression. Someone who seems approachable but has a bit of mystery about her. As for age, I think Maya is in her mid-20s. She's got this youthful energy about her. But there's also a sense of maturity and depth in her eyes that comes with life experience. When it comes to build, I'd say Maya is slim and graceful. But there's a slight delicacy to her frame that hints at a quiet inner strength. Now, her face is beautiful, but it's her eyes that truly captivate. They're expressive and warm, but they also reveal a hint of pain and sadness. Perhaps a reflection of a difficult past or a heavy burden she carries. But when she sits down at the piano, her entire demeanor transforms. She becomes radiant and confident, her fingers dancing across the keys with effortless grace. It's like music is her sanctuary, a place where she can express her true self without reservation. Her hair is a beautiful crown of tightly curled tendrils that fall to her shoulders. When she's at work, she pulls it back into a neat low bun. But when she's playing the piano, she lets it flow freely around her. And speaking of work, let's talk about her clothing. In the restaurant, Maya wears a tailored black dress with long sleeves and a crisp white collar. It's elegant and refined, just like her. The dress is cinched. She was offering him a graceful exit from his humiliation. Far more kindness than Marcus Webb had ever earned. The restaurant's general manager hurried to Maya's side. His expression caught between pride and panic, like a man trying to host a 5-star dinner during a kitchen fire. "Ms. Maya," he said, voice almost trembling with sincerity, "please know that you have our full support. Your job is secure." He paused, suddenly realizing how hollow job security sounded after a standing ovation. "Actually," Mrs. Sinclair interjected smoothly, her pearls glinting in the chandelier light, "I believe Ms. Maya may have better opportunities ahead of her." The implication landed like a royal decree. Tonight hadn't just been an interruption, it was a pivot point. The locked doors of Maya's life had just been thrown wide open. For the first time all night, Maya smiled. Not the polite curve of a server. Not the restrained acknowledgement of applause, but a radiant smile. Smile of someone who'd remembered exactly who she was. The performance hadn't just revealed her gift to the audience, it had revealed it to herself. As the evening wound down, patrons lined up like starstruck fans after a Broadway show. Business cards changed hands. Numbers scribbled on napkins. Promises of auditions and sponsorships whispered over emptied champagne flutes. The same people who de-watched her humiliation in silence were now tripping over themselves to be associated with her brilliance. Meanwhile, Webb sat marooned at his table, abandoned by his friends, ignored by the staff, stripped of his billionaire aura. He was no longer predator, no longer kingmaker. He was invisible, the very fate he'd tried to impose on Maya. The props of her disguise, name tag, order pad, now felt laughably small in her hands. She collected them anyway, but she moved differently now. Not like a waitress, not even like a pianist, but like someone who had reclaimed her identity. Tomorrow she might clock in again, carry trays, refill water glasses. But tonight she was an artist reborn. The restaurant thinned, patrons spilling into the cool Manhattan night, murmuring her name like a secret password. Maya lingered by the piano, her fingers brushing the keys. Business cards fanned in her other hand like a winning poker hand. Every one of them, a door that had been locked just hours before. Webb's table sat deserted, his friends abandoning him one by one like rats from a sinking yacht. The man himself had slithered out the back through the kitchen, hoping to dodge the humiliation that still hung in the dining room like expensive perfume. Sergio approached her, his face carrying something Maya had never seen before. Respect tinged with awe. "Maya," he said slowly, we had no idea. About Juilliard? About your training?" He gestured helplessly at the piano, still trying to absorb it all. "I never mentioned it," Maya replied simply. It didn't seem relevant. Serving tables. Her words weren't bitter, just steady. The kind of steady that comes from someone who has made peace with her choices, but is ready for better ones. In the corner, the forgotten hired pianist quietly packed his lifeless sheet music, his hands trembling. He approached Maya, his professional mask slipping into humility. Professional to professional. That was extraordinary. Truly, I've never heard Rachmaninoff played with such, he faltered heart, Maya offered, almost teasing. Authority, he said finally, and the word landed like a benediction. He extended his hand, and Maya shook it. To musicians equals. By the entrance, Mrs. Sinclair waited, her driver hovering at attention. When Maya approached, the older woman smiled, warm and unhurried. "My dear," she said softly, "I meant what I said. The Sinclair Foundation has connections with Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall." She trailed off, studying Maya's face, as though seeing a future written there. "I'll call you Maya," promised, slipping the card into her pocket with quiet reverence. It wasn't just a card. It was a key. It was more than a business card. As the restaurant emptied, Maya lingered beside the Steinway one last time. She ran her fingertips lightly across its ivory keys, not pressing, just tracing like saying goodbye to an old friend. Tomorrow would bring choices, decisions, maybe even sacrifices. But tonight she'd remembered who she truly was. 6 months later, Maya walked onto the stage at David Geffen Hall, her burgundy gown flowing like liquid fire beneath the lights. The sold-out audience hushed as she approached the Steinway model, the same kind of piano she once commanded at Lumiere, but now elevated to its rightful temple. The program cover read Maya, from Service to Symphonia Concert Series, funded by the Sinclair Foundation, to honor artists who declawed their way back from impossible odds. Her story was no longer whispered among restaurant tables. Tonight it would be broadcast live, streamed across the world. Millions would hear her Rachmaninoff, and through it her rebirth. In the front row sat Mrs. St. Clair, glowing with the satisfaction of a mentor watching her protégé rise higher than anyone had dared to imagine. And beside her unexpectedly sat Marcus Webb. He had reached out months after that infamous night. Not with excuses, not with empty apologies, but with a question that surprised even Maya. "Can I help?" His offer had been grand. Of course, fund her entire career, build her a concert hall in her name, slap her face on billboards from here to Tokyo. She had declined with the same grace she'd shown him at Lumiere, but she accepted something smaller, something meaningful. Together, they created the Webb Scholarship Program / full-ride scholarships each year at Juilliard. It's reserved for students whose only currency was raw talent and determination. It's no privilege, no shortcuts, just music. Maya now served on the selection committee, determined that other dreamers would never again have to choose between art and survival. As she settled at the piano, Maya thought of everyone who'd carried her here. Her parents, sitting proudly in the third row, her mother already weeping. Professor Martinez, who'd called the morning her Lumiere video went viral. Sergio, who had granted her time to audition when he didn't have to. Even the hired pianist from that night, who'd written her a short note. Thank you for reminding us why we fell in love with music. The spotlight dimmed, until it was just Maya and the piano floating in a universe of darkness. She raised her hands, and began with the same piece that had changed everything, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto. No, 2. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her, the New York Philharmonic swelled, dozens of world-class musicians joining her journey. The music filled the hall, no longer caged by cruelty or circumstance. Each note became a beacon for every server, every dreamer, every invisible soul working double shifts while their talent slept in the dark. When the final chord thundered across Lincoln Center, the audience froze for a heartbeat, and then eruption. Not the shocked applause of Lumiere, but the roaring, sustained ovation of people who had come specifically to celebrate her artistry. Maya rose, bowed deeply, and glanced toward the front row. Webb stood, clapping, his arrogance long stripped away, replaced by something purer. Respect. A nod between equals. The ovation lasted 5 minutes, but Maya knew this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new stages, new chances to prove one truth. Excellence has no boundaries. If Maya's journey from invisible waitress to Lincoln Center star moved you, you'll love fate tales where extraordinary people reveal their hidden talents and rewrite their destinies. Subscribe now for more inspiring stories of triumph over adversity, and remember, sometimes the greatest symphonies begin in silence.